There are moments in life when we stand before the ruins of what we once believed would be our future. The job we trained for slips away, the relationship we invested in falls apart, the opportunity we prayed for is given to someone else, and we are left staring at the shattered fragments of what we called a dream. This is not a rare occurrence, nor is it reserved for the weak or the unprepared. Even the most dedicated, the most faithful, the most visionary among us will, at some point, encounter the cold and bitter truth of disappointment. We are taught from an early age to dream big, to reach for the stars, to walk boldly into the future with the confidence that our aspirations will carry us. But life, with all its unpredictability and twists, does not always honor our timelines or our expectations. To face a shattered dream is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you dared to hope, that you had the courage to believe in something better. Some people never dream at all, content to remain in the safety of routine and the dullness of comfort. But to dream is to step into the unknown, to take the risk of loving something deeply enough that its loss would hurt. When that loss comes, and it often does, it feels like the air has been knocked from your lungs. You question your worth, your vision, your purpose. The very foundation of your identity begins to tremble. How could something so deeply cherished come undone? Yet the presence of broken dreams does not mean you were wrong to dream. It means you are alive. It means you are engaged in the bold, often brutal, process of becoming. When dreams shatter, it reveals the depth of your passion, the strength of your belief, and the magnitude of your heart. These dreams were not built on weakness, but on hope, and hope, even when cracked and scattered, still holds power. The reality of shattered dreams is not simply a moment of loss. It is a crossroads. It is a place where the soul is tested, where the ego is humbled, where truth stands taller than illusion. Every great soul in history has known this valley. Moses glimpsed the promised land, but never entered it. Gandhi faced prison, humiliation, and rejection. Even our Lord bore the agony of the cross before the glory of the resurrection. Martinlutherkingjr himself, in the midst of his fight for justice, watched laws change while hearts remained hardened, watched his movement swell only to face resistance that threatened to break it apart, and yet he marched. He spoke, he believed, not because the dream always looked whole, but because he knew it was worth carrying, even in pieces. To accept the reality of shattered dreams is not to give up. It is to recognize that pain is a part of the path, that loss does not define the journey. It is to stand in the debris of yesterday's hopes and acknowledge with trembling faith that even here something sacred can grow. It is to understand that the dream may not have failed. It may have simply revealed its deeper form, one that could only be seen through brokenness. For it is in those moments when all seems lost that our true selves are revealed, not in how we celebrate victory, but in how we endure disappointment. Pain is not the enemy of progress. It is often its birthplace. When dreams shatter and life crumbles beneath our feet, pain rushes in like a tidal wave, threatening to drown us in its weight. But within that ache, hidden deep beneath the sorrow, lies a sacred invitation, an invitation to discover purpose that runs deeper than success, deeper than comfort, deeper than the fleeting applause of the world. Pain, when embraced with courage and reflection, does not diminish the dream, it purifies it. It strips away the illusions of ease and entitlement and introduces us to the refining fire that has forged every meaningful life in history. There are few things more transformative than pain honestly faced. It has the strange and holy power to quiet the noise around us, to silence the distractions, and call us back to what truly matters. In the moments when we fall to our knees with nothing left to offer but our broken hearts, we often find our clearest vision, our truest voice, and our most enduring values. Pain has a way of awakening something deeper than ambition. It stirs a sense of calling. It pushes us to ask not simply, "What do I want?" but "What am I here for?" The road to purpose is rarely paved with uninterrupted victories. More often it winds through the valleys of disappointment, through nights of tears and silent prayers, through seasons when nothing makes sense and everything seems lost. But those who walk that road with open eyes will begin to see what pain is really doing. It is chiseling away our fears. It is burning away our pride. It is calling forth a resilience we never knew we possessed. Every heartbreak becomes a lesson. Every unanswered question becomes a step. Every tear waters the roots of a new beginning. To find purpose through pain is not about pretending that suffering is easy or desirable. It is about recognizing that pain, though unwanted, is a teacher. It shows us who we are when the masks fall away, when the crowd disappears, when the applause fades. It shows us what we truly believe, who we truly trust, and what we are truly willing to fight for. And sometimes it shows us a new dream, not the one we wanted, but the one we were meant to carry. History is full of men and women who found greatness only after walking through suffering. The prophets cried out from prisons and caves. The visionaries were mocked and misunderstood. The dreamers were betrayed and beaten, but their pain did not destroy them, it shaped them. They learned to walk with wounds and still move forward. They discovered that scars can become sacred. They found that strength is not the absence of pain, but the decision to keep walking through it. Pain opens the door to compassion both for ourselves and for others. Once we have suffered, we can no longer look at the world with indifferent eyes. We begin to feel the weight of injustice, the cry of the oppressed, the loneliness of those who have been forgotten. Pain softens our hearts and strengthens our resolve. It prepares us not just to dream, but to serve. Not just to succeed, but to lead with empathy, humility, and courage. And when we emerge from that place of pain, not unchanged, but transformed, we carry something more powerful than success. We carry purpose. A purpose that has been tested by fire, a purpose that can stand the storms of life, a purpose that is not shaken when the dream breaks because it was never built on comfort. It was built on truth, on calling, on something eternal. In a world driven by accolades and achievements, we are taught to measure success by the milestones we reach, the titles we earn, the applause we receive. But when a dream is shattered, those outward measures fade into the background, and we are left face to face with the raw truth that struggle itself carries a sacred value. True success is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of meaning in the midst of it. It is not defined by whether every plan unfolds as expected, but by how we respond when it does not. When we learn to redefine success through struggle, we reclaim our power from circumstances we cannot control and plant it firmly in the hands of our response, our endurance, our growth. Struggle refines the dream. It turns vague ambition into sharp intention. It separates the shallow from the substantial. There are dreams that are born in excitement but tested in hardship. Only through adversity do we discover whether the dream we carried was real, whether it was built on purpose or pride, whether it came from the soul or from the ego. Struggle forces us to let go of fantasies and hold on to what is essential. And in that refining, we become stronger, clearer, deeper. We begin to see that the pursuit of something meaningful is always accompanied by a price, and that price is often paid in tears, in doubts, in lonely nights and quiet courage. Every person who has done anything great has walked through the crucible of struggle. They were not celebrated because everything came easily to them. They were celebrated because they endured, because they grew, because they stood firm even when their path was lined with thorns. Struggle shapes character in a way that comfort never can. It teaches humility when we are tempted by pride. It teaches empathy when we are tempted by judgment. It teaches faith when we are tempted by fear. When we choose to stay present in our struggle, to not run from it or numb it, we gain access to a strength that can carry us farther than talent or timing ever could. To redefine success through struggle is to stop asking, "Did I win?" and start asking, "Did I grow? Did I love? Did I remain faithful to what I believe?" It is to know that the greatest victories are sometimes invisible to others, the choice to forgive when you could have hated, the decision to try again when you felt like quitting, the ability to remain kind when life was cruel. These are not headlines, but they are the true markers of greatness. Struggle connects us to our humanity. It reminds us that no matter our status or stage in life, we are all vulnerable, we are all learning, we are all in process. And that connection becomes the foundation for community, for compassion, for justice. Those who struggle develop eyes to see the suffering of others. They develop hearts that care, voices that speak, and hands that serve. They understand that their pain was never meant to be wasted. It was meant to be transformed into purpose. When we stop idolizing the finish line and start honoring the process, we give ourselves permission to find meaning even in the mess. We realize that brokenness is not the opposite of success. It is part of the journey toward it. Each setback becomes a teacher. Each delay becomes a preparation. Each failure becomes fertile ground for wisdom, for clarity, for the kind of strength that the world cannot give and cannot take away. When we redefine success through struggle, we begin to live not for the approval of others, but for the fulfillment of our calling, and that is a victory no hardship can undo. Resilience is not simply the ability to keep going. It is the quiet, unwavering decision to rise again when everything inside you wants to give up, when dreams are shattered and hope feels like a flickering candle in a storm. Resilience becomes more than a trait. It becomes a way of life. It is the refusal to let defeat have the final word. It is the strength to stand in the ashes of what was and believe that something new can still be born. In the face of broken expectations and unforeseen detours, resilience is the power that says, "This is not how my story ends." The transforming power of resilience lies in its ability to turn pain into purpose and disappointment into determination. It does not erase the heartbreak or ignore the wounds, but it gives them meaning. It declares that even the most devastating losses do not define us. They shape us. Resilience is what makes a person rise with deeper compassion after being broken. It is what gives someone the courage to still believe in love after betrayal, to still work for justice after being denied, to still dream after waking up to the reality of failure. It is not a denial of hardship, but a decision to move forward in spite of it. Some of the most powerful voices in history were not born from uninterrupted success, but from lives forged in adversity. They found their voice because of the pain, not in spite of it. They learned how to lead because they knew what it meant to fall. They had the courage to speak because they had felt the silence. That is the miracle of resilience. It produces a wisdom that cannot be learned in books, a strength that cannot be inherited, a depth that can only be carved out by walking through the fire and surviving it. It gives you eyes to see what others miss, and a heart that beats stronger with every battle faced. Resilience does not promise that things will go back to the way they were. It does not guarantee that every dream will be restored exactly as you imagined. What it offers is something far greater. It offers transformation. It takes the fragments of what once was and reshapes them into something new, something wiser, something braver. It turns the dreamer into a builder. It turns sorrow into fuel. It takes every no you've heard and teaches you how to create your own yes. In a culture that idolizes speed and instant gratification, resilience teaches us the value of staying power. It tells us that the most beautiful things in life are not rushed but refined. It reminds us that patience is not passivity, it is power under control. To be resilient is to believe that growth can happen even in the dark, that progress can be slow but sure, that every small step matters. It is to walk with faith even when the path is unclear, to work with excellence even when no one sees, to love even when your heart is still healing. The transforming power of resilience lies in its quiet rebellion against despair. It chooses to hope when it's easier to surrender. It chooses to rebuild when it's easier to walk away. It chooses to rise again and again, not because the pain is gone, but because the purpose is greater. This kind of resilience changes not just what we do, but who we become. It strengthens our character, deepens our empathy, and calls forth the best in us. It is not flashy, it is not always visible, but it is one of the most powerful forces in the world. When a soul refuses to be broken, when it chooses to rise in the face of failure, when it keeps showing up, loving, trying, believing, that is the transforming power of resilience at work. Faith is not just belief in a distant outcome. It is the conviction that even in the darkest moments there is meaning, there is guidance, and there is a higher power at work beyond what we can see. When our dreams are shattered, when the world no longer looks familiar, and when hope seems like a distant memory, faith becomes the anchor that keeps us from drifting into despair. It does not always answer every question, nor does it shield us from the sting of disappointment, but it gives us the strength to stand when everything around us is falling. Faith whispers that the story is not over, even when the pages seem blank and the future unreadable. In the moments when we feel most lost, faith reminds us that we are not alone. It is the assurance that even though we walk through the valley of shadows, there is a hand guiding us, a purpose shaping us, a light waiting on the other side. Faith invites us to trust not in what we see, but in what we cannot yet see. It is not a passive hope that things might work out. It is an active choice to keep walking, keep believing, and keep building, even when the foundation has cracked beneath us. When faith is tested by failure, it deepens. It moves from something spoken to something lived. It stops being a phrase we repeat and becomes the fire we carry. True faith is not proven when things go well. It is revealed when things fall apart. It is the strength that allows a person to pray even after the loss, to smile even after the storm, to serve others even while carrying their own wounds. It is the invisible thread that ties our hearts to the eternal, giving us a sense of purpose that cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks. History honors those who held on to faith in the midst of chaos. They stood firm not because they had all the answers, but because they trusted in a vision greater than themselves. They believed that justice was still worth pursuing, even when injustice seemed to win. They believed that peace was still possible even when surrounded by violence. They believed that love could still overcome hate even when hate roared the loudest. Their faith was not naive, it was bold, defiant, and grounded in truth. It allowed them to walk through fire and not be consumed, to carry a cross and still declare hope, to be broken and yet still become a blessing to others. When dreams collapse, faith offers a different perspective. It invites us to believe that there is still beauty in the broken, still purpose in the pain, still power in the waiting. It teaches us to listen for the quiet voice of grace in the silence of loss. It helps us see that unanswered prayers may not be denials, but redirections. It reminds us that our worth is not tied to what we achieve, but to who we are and whose we are. Faith teaches us to see beyond the visible, to walk not by sight, but by trust, to hold on to hope even when the road is long and lonely. Faith is not a guarantee of comfort, it is a promise of presence. It assures us that we are being led even when we do not understand the way. It empowers us to move forward when logic says to quit. It keeps our hearts soft when bitterness tries to take root. It calls us to believe not just in a future, but in a purpose greater than any single moment. Faith turns shattered dreams into sacred ground, places where we meet our true selves, where we discover a new kind of strength, and where we learn to trust not just in outcomes, but in the one who holds our future. When the dream you held so close breaks into 1,000 pieces, there is a moment of silence so heavy it feels like time itself has paused. In that silence, you are left with nothing but fragments, memories of what could have been, hopes that once soared high, now scattered like shards of glass across the floor of your heart. But even in that painful stillness, there lies a hidden power, the power to build again. Not as you once did, blindly reaching for perfection or recognition, but with new wisdom, deeper purpose, and a soul shaped by fire. From those broken pieces, you are called not merely to rebuild the same dream, but to create a greater one, a truer one, one that reflects who you are becoming, not who you once were. There is something sacred about rebuilding. It is an act of courage, of vision, of faith. It is refusing to let the past have the final word. It is declaring that your pain will not be the end of your story, but the beginning of a new chapter. When you build again from broken pieces, you are no longer the same person who first dared to dream. You carry the lessons of loss, the strength of survival, the clarity that only comes through suffering. What you build now will not be naive or shallow. It will be strong, it will be honest, it will be real. And because it is born from brokenness, it will have the power to withstand future storms. Often, the dream we originally chased was too small for the person we were meant to become. It may have looked grand in the eyes of the world, but deep down, it did not yet reflect the fullness of our potential. Sometimes the shattering is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the universe, or God, or life itself, redirecting us towards something greater than we had imagined. When we let go of what was, we make space for what could be, and that space becomes the foundation on which a new, more meaningful dream can rise. To build from broken pieces requires a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing failure as final, we begin to see it as formative. Instead of clinging to perfection, we begin to embrace process. Instead of chasing applause, we begin to pursue purpose. The very pieces that once cut and wounded us become tools in our hands. The very scars that once shamed us become stories of survival and strength. We become architects of redemption, artists of reinvention, creators of something more enduring than any fleeting success. And when we build again, we do so not only for ourselves, but for others. Our rebuilt dream carries within it the power to heal, to inspire, to lift others who are still sitting among their own shattered hopes. We become proof that brokenness is not the end, that from ashes can rise beauty, that from sorrow can rise strength. We speak not just with words, but with the testimony of our lives, saying to those in despair, you too can rise, you too can rebuild, you too can find your dream again, not as it was, but as it was always meant to be. This is the dream reborn, not out of ease, but out of endurance, not out of untouched ambition, but out of tested and tempered hope. It is a greater dream because it is built with truth, with humility, with the hard-earned wisdom of the journey. It does not seek to escape the pain, but transforms it into power. It does not deny the past, but redeems it into purpose. And every piece, every fragment, every scar becomes part of a mosaic that tells the world something beautiful has emerged from the broken.